Hello, my friends. Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works workshop, and we appear to be live according to the screen here. I'm never sure until I see that first person scroll up, and I just did. Howdy. Just so you know, I am ready. I guess that's his username is Howdy. Curtis Mealer is there too, and Jeff Puris. So it looks like we're on the roll, so I think we're here. Well, I think we got a fun program lined up for you today. It'll be kind of a short program on my part, but then we'll do questions and answers as usual. First thing I'll do is go through a little bit of housekeeping that I have on my outline. And to give you an update on Ron's status, my buddy Ron that makes the deer antler saddles, he's doing really well now, finally. He was really down with COVID, just bad. He was in the hospital for several days and been on oxygen for a couple of months now, and for the last 2 or 3 weeks now, he's been off the oxygen finally. So he's doing pretty well, and he's kind of back to normal. And just to let you know that every Tuesday evening in the Rolla, Missouri area, we're playing at the Dickey's Barbecue in Rolla. So that's usually at 6:30 p.m. and we stay till around. My friends will be joining me down there and my band. And we'll have other viewer friends showing up too. I know my buddy Bruce Robinson from down in Mississippi, Oxford, Mississippi. He'll be there. Several other YouTube viewer friends will be there too, and if you can make it, please come on out. And if you decide you're going to come to the Mountain View event a week or so before we get down there, we'll just text or send me an email, and I'll send you my text number where you can text me while we're down there, and that way you'll know where we're at, and I can keep you informed of what we're doing. Well, today when I looked, we were at 76,345. Let me rephrase that. I don't know how to say that. 76,345. Yeah, I guess that's right. Subscribers, and it's climbing steadily every day. We're at 343,000 minutes of view time per day. And let's see, I put a different link in the video description. JR, my son, has his channel on YouTube, and he's got a real cute video of him calling in his stallion from the pasture. If you've never seen, that done the way he did, especially the way he did it, there's a whole bunch of mares out in the pasture. If you know anything about a stallion, it's pretty hard to get a stallion to come away from a bunch of mares. But this stallion is so well trained that all he does is go out to the pasture and he says, "Hello, Bob, come here." And he might whistle like that or something, and Bob will just throw his head up and come running. It's just amazing. It's just amazing that horse will do that. Okay, so anyway, there's a link in the description for that if you want to check that out. I moved the Allen Dust sander out of the description now because he provided me with free plans for his sander. They're PDF plans, and I put them on my website. They're on my shopping page, and they're at the very bottom of the shopping page. Now, you will go through the process just like you're making a purchase. There's no cost for them. It's zero cost, but you do have to jump through the hoops to click all the right buttons in order to get an email then at the end, and the email will contain a link so you can download the plans. But at least it's free, and it's worth clicking a few extra buttons there. Let's see. We've got a guest in the shop today, so would you mind stepping around here, letting them see you? This is George. You saw George on the video yesterday, I believe. There he is.
Good morning.
There he is. And George is
early.
Yeah, it is. George is from Houston, Texas, and we had fun yesterday. We took a little tour of the farm. If you didn't, I'm sure you haven't seen that video clip because I'm about to show it to you right now. So let me just click on that and let you see our little video clip from yesterday.
Well, my friends, this is Judy Adams, and there's her husband George. You met on our vlog yesterday. we were out showing him the property after we worked on his guitar all afternoon, and look what we found, a whole bunch more mushrooms. I don't know, how many did we say we had?
I think we had 14 or 15. Yeah,
it might even be 16 here, I think we got.
Look at the size of these. But that one.
Judy found 3 or 4, and George found 2, and then I found most of the rest of them.
Yeah, here's what I found right here.
I've never seen morel mushrooms grown like this.
Yeah, it's fun to find them. They're really hard to see. You can be looking right at them and not see them. It's so hard. And one of the cases was I saw 2, so I went around the sticker bush to get to them. When I got around, I couldn't find them. Came all the way back around. I saw them again, went back around, and finally got them out of there. But boy, you lose track of them really fast.
Yeah, but you can tell Jerry's the pro. And he says Sue's the one that cooks them up for him.
So we had a nice tour of the farm. You guys enjoy that?
It's beautiful property.
Beautiful property, lots of springs, gorgeous too.
So fun.
We have so much fun here.
Well, there you go. We had a good outing. It was the weather's finally cooperated around here. I mean, like, it was just crazy cold just a couple of days ago. It was like in the 20s. So, you know, today I imagine it's going to get up in the 70s is what I'm guessing. And maybe even 80s, you never know. It's kind of crazy weather. We've got 133 viewers at the moment. Let me give you the status of a couple projects. Well, the mandolin itself, you can kind of see the bottom edge of it hanging right there. It has not changed, so the last time you saw it, it still looks the same. But I'm working on it. I don't know how well that'll show up, but I'm drawing my vine, and I think I may have shown this in a vlog earlier. I've made these little roses out of wood. That's yellow wood to match the yellow rose. And so basically these yellow roses will be my position markers. In other words, they'll go at the end of the places where you would normally have dots. And so on the 12th fret there, there'll be 2 dots, you know, or 2 roses actually. So that's my design anyway. The problem with this, drawing it and doing it on paper, that's simple. But scanning it into the computer and making it where the laser cutter is smart enough to understand it, yeah, that's a little bit complicated, and I'm working on that right now. There's 4 or 5 different ways you can do it, and the first way I tried looks like it's going to be just take forever. And so I think I'm going to have to back up and do what I thought was actually going to be the longer way to do it, but I think it's actually, in the long run, it's going to be shorter. So either way, it's a lot of work, but I'll have to maybe even show a video of that down the road of what I had to go through to make that work on a computer. Well, we lost 10 people. We're down to 123 viewers, so I guess I must have did something wrong. What did I say? Let's see. I think that's it on that part. Now, on George's guitar, you probably saw that in the vlog. It's a country western Model Gibson, and I purposely left the clamps on here so you can see that this is live, and I'm gonna take the clamps off right here, right now. So let's just see. I'll turn the camera down here where you can see what I'm doing. We don't know what we're gonna get yet, so. And George is in studio here, so I'm sure George will attest to you that this is live. This is not Memorex. Do you remember those old commercials, the Memorex? Is this live or is this Memorex? Well, this is live. Let's see here. You know, that clamp there is so tight, I'll have to get it out last, I guess. So I'm hoping this new bridge we made will work out. And I know George is hoping that more than me. And I'm just hoping I can get the clamp out of here. Seriously, this clamp is going to be hard to get out. Oh, all right. I'm doing it the wrong way. I have to pull this out. There you go. Once I get that out, now I can get the clamp out. You got to be smarter than the clamp. There you go. Yeah, that one clamp is just a little different than the other 2, and it's just a little narrower. And then we had a nice, thick, large caul in there. And the reason we did that was so that we could flatten out this whole area. And at the moment, that looks pretty flat. I don't know if you can see that at your angle there, but that looks pretty darn flat. Let's just take and put the straight edge on it. It was pretty much a full 1/8 of an inch out, and so I'm hoping it's going to be a little less than that. Well, truthfully, it's a little less, but it isn't much less. It's definitely not as much, I don't think, as it was. But honestly, it's not quite as much as I was hoping for. I was hoping it would pull it down a little bit more. But as you can see, we do have the bridge on there. Now, there's no slot in it yet, so that's what we'll be doing after the shop talk this morning, is I'll set up to cut that slot in there. And of course, we'll intonate it, you know, to find out exactly where we want to cut the slot. So that's our next steps. And you've seen me do that on videos before, and George is going to get to see it live here in a little while. So, I believe that's that. And we're quickly running out of stuff to talk about. So get those questions ready if you have any. Wow, we're losing viewers left and right. We're down to 120. That's the first time I've ever seen this happen. Did I do something wrong? Did I make somebody mad? Usually it keeps climbing up till around 200 or something. But today, either that or George doesn't, you know, somebody don't like George. That must be what it is.
Judy.
I'm kidding, George. I'm kidding. I don't know. Things happen all the time, you know, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's the Rose's Law. That's what it is. Well, I'm picking up my mandolin here. This is the bird's eye maple mandolin. There was the second mandolin that I built. I've told the story about how I made this top. This top board was the real cheap piece of lumber that I found under a stack of 2x4s in a hardware store. I made the manager help, or actually there was one of the boys in the store, that one of his workers helped me unstack all the 2x4s, and we got this board out from underneath them. This was the board on the floor that the 2x4s were stacked on. So anyway, I got it up to the register, and he charged me $1.50 for this board. And so, but it's honestly one of my best mandolins I ever built. It was the loudest mandolin forever. And then my wife accidentally ran over this and broke it in 7 places with the car. Fortunately, it was in one of my really tough cases, so it didn't bust it terribly, it just cracked it. Anyway, I fixed all that, and then a week after I fixed that, I'm not kidding you, 1 week almost exactly, the case lid fell shut and cracked it right there. So it's meant to be cracked. I never did go back and fix that one. Anyway, I wanted to do a live song for you today. You know, it's... you never know what you're going to get on live. You just have to bear with me. If I make mistakes, you'll just have to live with them. And of course, I'll have to live with them because it's going to be on the video. Now we're back up to 137, so YouTube's messing with me today. Anyway, I wanted to tell you the true story about this song that I wrote. I think the story is probably better than the song, actually. So here's what happened. I used to be the president of the Missouri Area Bluegrass Committee, and it was an organization in the St. Louis area that put on festivals, and we'd put on, I don't know, anywhere up to maybe 10 or 12 festivals a year, or shows. I wouldn't necessarily say they were festivals, they were more like shows. Anyway, we would put on all these different shows and a few festivals. And we were putting on a fundraiser show for the organization in Wentzville, Missouri one evening. And we had a pretty good crowd. I don't know, I'm going to guess there was 150, 200 people in the crowd, just something like that. And about a week, no, let's see, I'm sorry, it was about a month after that show, my phone rang, and this fellow had a weird question. He says, "Are you Jerry Rosen?" I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, I've got a odd question for you. You know that show you guys played in Wentzville, Missouri? Did you know if anybody took any pictures of the audience that night?" And instantly my mind went to something like a lawsuit or something, that he's got to prove something, or, you know, so I don't know. My mind just kind of went in the wrong direction there. And he said, well, I don't, and I asked him why he wanted to know. I said, if you tell me why, I might be able to, I said, I know a lot of the people that were there that night, and maybe I could, find somebody that would be able to help you. And he goes, well, I don't really want to tell you the reason. He says, I don't want to burden you with that. And, well, I could tell, and I could tell it was hurting him, in his voice, the way he was talking. So, but you know me, I can't leave well enough alone. I had to ask him. I said, well, sir, I think you ought to tell me why you need to know. And I said, I know tons of people that were there that night, and I'll put you in touch with the right person, and maybe they had a camera, and that kind of thing. And I said, tell me where you were sitting, what area of the crowd you were in, that type of thing. Because he wanted a picture where he was sitting, see. Well, he says, all right, well, I didn't want to burden you with this, but I'll tell you. He said, I just got out of the hospital today. He said, on the way home that night, we had a car accident. And he said, my wife was killed. And boy, it really choked me up. So anyway, I wasn't able to find a picture of his wife that night. He wanted a picture of the last thing they did together. But the instant I hung up the phone, I wrote this song. So I'm going to play it for you here. And if I can get through it without screwing it all up here. It's called, Did Anybody Take Her Picture? Did anybody take her picture? I've heard a picture's worth 1,000 words, and I'd like to have just one more conversation, so I'll have to let a picture speak for her. I didn't know it was our last night together, the last time I'd see her live. Side by side we watched that show together, but on that lonely road that night she died. I've only my memory to serve me, and remember the good times we had. If only I'd taken her picture, I could speak to it and wouldn't feel so sad. Did anybody take a picture? I've heard a picture's worth 1,000 words, and I'd like to have just one more conversation, so I'll have to let a picture speak for her. Thought to take her picture. In fact, it never once crossed my mind. But now that she has gone on forever, well, I think about it all of the time. Did anybody take her picture? I've heard a picture's worth 1,000 words, and I'd like to have just one more conversation, so I'll have to let a picture speak for her. Yes, I'll have to let a picture speak for her. So there you go. And that's, now that I got to thinking about that while I was singing that, that's probably the reason we keep losing viewers. They heard there was going to be a live song. Anyway, you get what you pay for. It looks like we're up to 145, so we actually increased during that. That's a good thing. Didn't expect that either. George says I should play more for you guys. That's what he said. I guess he don't like you. I have fun. People have more fun than anybody. Well, I think that's just about the end of it here. We're about ready for some questions and answers. If anyone has any, I do see some questions scrolling up the screen there. Let me scroll back up and see if I can see where they started. And looks like Bill Webb, my buddy he's from Texas also, I think. I forgot where in Texas you're from. Are you from Commerce, Texas? Is that right? Or is that a different place? Or different friend. I can't remember, Bill, but anyway, it says, Bill's question is, would a boiled linseed oil finish work on a guitar? I have used it on gun stocks and it was fine. Just wondering, cause like the matte or dull look of an oil finish. Yeah, Bill, it will work. It's a little more complicated. I mean, it's easy to apply it. That part's easy, but it's a little more complicated in the fact that it just seems to take a long time to build it up, and it takes a long time for it to cure real well. But it should work just fine. So if you want to do that, you could do that. The alternative to that would be to actually use an oil varnish like True Oil Gunstock Varnish. It's a little faster for you. It'll cure quicker, you know. But either one of those should work just fine. The next question. Let's see here. It's scrolled up a long way. When you just touch this thing and it just jumps. I don't know how far it jumped. Okay. There we are. Richard Ingram asks, I am finishing my little shop. What do you suggest for overhead lights? Well, I'm glad you asked, Richard. I definitely, absolutely, 100% recommend LED lights. That's changed everything. I only have 4 lights in this shop, just 4 lights. Now, in my old shop, I think I had, I had at least 9, and they were all fluorescent lights. And I didn't get as much light out of those 9 fluorescent lights. And those were dual bulbs. Each one of those fixtures was dual, so you could call it 18 bulbs, if you will. And in here, I've got 4 fixtures, and they're dual, so I've got 8. So less than half of what I had up there, and I guarantee I have more light in here with only the 4 LEDs. And the LED prices have come down now, and these are, I don't know a brand name. I'm pretty sure I just bought them off of Amazon or eBay. But they look just like the old fluorescent style. That's what the ones I have look like. They make lots of options in LED lights now, and you'd probably be better off Googling it or actually searching on YouTube and seeing what different people recommend. Because mine were a while back now. I'm not sure how many years ago I purchased these, but I purchased them when I first moved the shop down here, and I'm not sure how long ago that was. I'm going to say 5-6 years ago, something like that. Anyway, that's what I'd recommend, Richard, and you won't go wrong if you do that, because it's a much better light for working on stuff. The fluorescent is okay, but it's expensive too, and compared to these are much cheaper to operate. So you'll like them. Let's see, scrolling down quite a ways here. I don't think I missed anybody, but Bob L says, hi Jerry, how is Ron doing? Well, I mentioned that at the very beginning. He is doing really well now, finally. He is out of the hospital. Well, I mean, he's been out of the hospital a long time, but he's finally off of oxygen now. After he's been off of oxygen about 2 to maybe almost 3 weeks now. So he's doing pretty good, and he's back to his activities and things. And he looks much better too when you see him. He's smiling, and he's perked up a lot, because he really was way down for Ron. Ron's kind of like me. He's pretty active. He stays busy all the time. C. Wilczek, looks like the name there. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Would beech be a good bridge and or bridge plate? Well, I'll have to plead I don't know on that one. I really haven't used beech. I don't really know much about it, honestly. I will just say it this way: if it's a real hardwood, and especially if it's quarter sawn, and if you can hold it up and tap on it, and you kind of hear it click, it's probably fine. But typically hardwoods that are quarter sawn, most of them, I would say, more than half of them anyway, are going to be fine choices. There's just some, though, that when you tap on them, they just go thud, like there's nothing there, like there's just no sound. If you could pick them up and tap on them and they have a sound, then they're probably okay to use. That's kind of my seat of the pants guide right there. I don't know how to pronounce this one either. Hox. Oh, I see your name a lot of times in the comments here, but I don't know if I know how to pronounce it. Hoxo123. HOXOH123. Let's see. I can only buy raw linseed oil in my store. Can I use it as boiled linseed oil? No, there's a huge difference. Raw linseed oil, I don't think, I could be wrong on this, but I don't think raw linseed oil will dry or will cure. Or if it will, it's exceptionally a long time. And the boiled linseed oil is a long time as it is. But it will cure much faster, I believe, than the raw. I think that's the primary difference, but I really honestly am no expert on either of those. Bruce Robinson, my buddy, Harbor Freight has some great LED shop lights for a good price. Well, I don't doubt that. Harbor Freight does have a lot of good stuff. One of these days I'm going to do a video on my favorite Harbor Freight tools and things. I have a number of them that I absolutely think are as good as anything you can buy anywhere. There's several of them. Then there's a lot of stuff I buy there that's like, well, I use that once and throw it away, kind of, But there's some things, man. Some of them are just awesome. And so if Bruce is saying the lights are good, I'm sure they are. Rob Walker. Hi, Jerry. Have you ever tried cross picking? Rob, I've tried to have people show me that. And, it takes... First of all, I'm not very good at learning those kinds of things. I'll just be honest. And it's the truth. I'm not. I kind of have to teach it myself. But when I try to have people show it to me, I can't understand what they're doing. I'm not going to name any names, but I blame it on not being able to show people. There's a knack to being able to show someone how to do something. And the folks that I was asking, they didn't seem to have that knack. They just kind of did it, and you try to pick, and you just can't see it quick enough, and I never have been able to do it. I've tried and tried to teach myself and try to figure it out, and I haven't been able to do it. And I'm too old now. I'll never get it down now. At least I don't think I will. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but the truth is I don't think I'll get it now if I couldn't get it years ago, and I've tried for years to learn that. I have worked at, he goes on to say, I've worked out a technique using a flat pick and my middle finger. Didn't sound too bad. Well, I do have my own little kind of alternating pick thing, but it's not really the cross picking that I hear like Jesse McReynolds do. But I do have my own little version of something like that, but it's definitely not like Jesse McReynolds. But anyway, thanks for the question. I wish I could do that. That would be cool. Dave Dickey, would a deer antler nut and or bridge improve the sound of a dulcimer? The nut might help, but the bridge probably would help more. It would probably give you more volume. I don't think it would do much more than give you a little bit more volume, but that may be helpful on a dulcimer. A lot of dulcimers don't have a lot of volume, so that may be helpful there. I don't know, Dave. I've just never tried it. So, but I don't think it will hurt you any. I'll just say it that way. RZH, is the username. What 12th fret action height do you recommend for a 12-string guitar? Well, that's a good question. 12 strings are kind of a horse of a different color, and I don't get around very many of them, to be honest with you. Don't see that many of them. But I would say it's, it ought to be in the same ballpark as your regular guitar, really. It probably a hair higher for the most part, but it doesn't have to be. I would say you're still in the same ballpark. So, roughly 90 on your bass strings and roughly 80 on your treble strings ought to do it. I don't do anything special for a 12 string when I set them up. I pretty much set them up as low as I think I can get them, and if they don't buzz, I usually count my blessings and just go on from there. That's kind of the truth of it. So I don't know if that answered your question. I hope it did. Yeah, someone is saying to be sure to pay attention to the lumen output on your lights. Yeah, and my personal preference when you're buying LED lights, my personal preference is to buy the ones that say daylight on them. I don't like the warm LED lights. To me, they're too yellow or too, the light just isn't crisp enough. And especially in a workshop, I want that light crisp and clear and bright. And so I want the daylight version if there's two choices. Paul Akers, can you show your binding jig? I'm not sure what we're talking about there. Are you talking about the little jig where you actually glue the pieces of binding together? And that would be for plastic binding, if that's what you're talking about? I'm trying to think of what other thing I would have that's a binding jig. The only other thing I've used is the actual vacuum pressing bag where I've laminated larger pieces together and then I sawed them out as binding. So I'm not sure which one you're asking about there, Paul. If you want to clarify that, I'll try to address that here in a minute. Gordon Bartlett, when making purfling and binding strips, could you use curve form like a barrel stave to yeah, you definitely could, Gordon. And if you were going to make a lot of it and stuff and you knew you were always going to make it for the same thing in the same shape, yeah, it'd probably be a good idea, really, to kind of preform it, especially if you're making them out of wood. I mean, now if you're making them out of plastic, it doesn't really matter that much, but on the wood ones, yeah, it would probably be a real good idea. Why didn't I think of that, Bartlett? Gordon, why didn't I think of that? But it probably would be a good idea. Now, having said that, it's still, there's still goods and bads with that. When you make them preform like that, that's going to make them really stiff. And so you better make sure they're pretty close to the shape you want them, or you're going to have a tough time getting them to fit in there. But anyway, it's a good idea, I think. It's worth exploring for sure. Paul Helton here, Paul Walton asks a question. I just noticed it. If you can, please try to put your question marks in front of your question, but I did see one here that I think he's asking. It says, have you ever tried using shellac and very fine sandpaper 600 grit to act as a pore filler? Yeah, more or less that's what I'm about to do here on this Gibson, is I'm going to try to fill those pores again. Shellac by itself typically is a pore filler. I mean, it typically is. This particular Gibson, and people, have told me it's anything and everything, and yeah, trust me guys, this is not my first rodeo. I've had things happen a billion different times on these things. This one, for some reason, is by far the worst one. And everybody's saying, well, it's got to be that it's got silicone in it. Well, maybe. I don't think that's it at all, to be honest. I really don't. I've sanded it down to bare wood twice, and it's done the same thing twice. I wondered if it was the moisture in my lines on my sprayer, so I've drained those out, and then I sprayed that shellac, and it did the same thing, even though the lines were dry and the compressor was dry. Yeah, I don't know. There are just some things that's hard to explain. Yeah, and anytime you're really wanting to get something done really badly, that's typically, at least my luck, when it's not going to cooperate. So anyway, I don't know how to explain it, but I've tried almost everything you can imagine. Matter of fact, you know what? I'm going to, very soon, I'm going to do a vlog on all the things I've tried for pore fillers. It'll blow your mind. So I have tried more things than you would ever dream a person has tried. So I'll show you those one of these days. And I don't want to have too big a spoiler alert here, but none of them are worth a hoot. They all work under certain conditions. They all work under certain, applications. And some of them just plain work, period. But I don't like them for one reason or another. And there's actually three main reasons, and I could kind of make it four, but there's three main reasons. The one that I'm going to kind of combine is that it's just too convoluted of a process to go through, and I'll combine that with you have to do it so many times. So, like some of them, they just feel you wipe them on and wipe them off with burlap, etc. But you got to do it like 5-6 times, and I'm thinking if I got to do it 5 or 6 times, heck, I'll just do it with the finish, So that's reason number one. Reason number two is that it changes the color or the look, and there's a lot of them that actually work pretty darn good, but they change the color or they change the look. I'm not interested. The third reason is that they change the sound. If I wanted to build a fiberglass body instrument, I'd build an Ovation. I don't want to coat my acoustic instrument with epoxy. People say use epoxy. Well, I know it will work. I just don't want to use epoxy. So maybe just call that stubborn if you want to. But for me, it's what it does to the sound. I don't want an epoxy-coated instrument, I know some people use them and will say, I use it all the time and it's perfectly fine. Well, that's fine for you, but it's not fine for me. So it's just that simple. So there you go. Maybe I don't need to make that video. But I have used so many products. That cabinet is pretty much full of those products. Yeah, it's just amazing. I've tried them all. And I've had the presidents of those companies on the phone with me while I'm using it, and them walking me through the process. 2 different times, 2 different companies. Not so much. I'm just not impressed with any of them. Just not impressed with any of them. So there you go. Maybe I'm just hard to please, or just stubborn, or both, or all of that. So let's see, moving on down to, wow, you guys are just making up these usernames. I swear you are. You're just trying to throw me off today. MOOGOOMOOGOO. Yeah, sure. I want to hear you pronounce it. I even want you to pronounce that one. I found a website selling mammoth tusk as bridge blanks. Any experience with these? More expensive than deer antler. Yeah, well, mammoth tusk would be what you would probably call fossilized ivory, more than likely. Since no animals were harmed in the making of those, I think some of that stuff is legal to sell and stuff. Now, you can't buy like tusk like that off of an elephant anymore, I don't believe. But I don't really have any experience with that. Now, the one thing that people have said over the years, though, which kind of gets me going is that it kind of gets under my skin a little bit is when they say, I bought fossilized ivory, walrus ivory, fossilized. Well, if it's fossilized, it's not ivory, it's rock. Fossilized is stone. Period. End of discussion. That's what fossilized means. It's turned to stone. If it's not stone, and stone's way too hard. So now you're either using ivory or you're using fossilized ivory, which would be stone. So tell me which one you're using, I guess is the question. But in your case, you did say it's just mammoth tusk. So if that's the case, that's ivory. Ivory would work well, but the problem with ivory is that it's very hard. And it's hard on your equipment and hard on your saws. I mean, it's basically teeth. And your teeth are very hard. So that's the problem with the ivory thing that I have. I haven't tried it, used it. Now, don't crucify me, it wasn't my fault, but someone did send me a piece of ivory off of an elephant. Now, they claim it was legal because it was, taken years and years and years ago, and it's grandfathered or whatever. I don't know anything about that. But I do have a piece that someone sent to me. I've never even attempted to try to use it, partly for the reasons today that no one would want you to use it, but the other reason is just simply because it's so very, very hard. And so I've just never bothered with it. Okay, I don't know. That was a long answer to your question there, but anyway, that's kind of the whole story with the ivory thing. It's one of those deals where people kind of frown on it anymore anyway, so I just don't deal with it. Have you ever tried to spatula varnish on the guitar when there are holes in the varnish? Well, spatula, I've used little droppers and toothpicks and things to fill holes and things, and that works okay. And if you don't have too many, but when the whole instrument is covered like this one, it's just way too much. But yeah, whenever I only have one or two holes, yeah, I definitely drop fill on all those kinds of things. Or even a dozen holes you can drop fill, but once you get beyond a couple of dozen, it's kind of awkward. Tom Crow, let's see, okay, I think that's the end of the questions. Well, we're up to 164 viewers. What is the difference between deer antler and ebony? Well, you got a couple hours? No, actually the difference is deer antler grows on a deer's head and ebony grows on a tree. That's the first difference. Ebony is black, and it's black wood, and it grows on trees pretty much mostly. I mean, I know there's a few islands that, like maybe Madagascar and whatever, but a lot of it comes from Africa. So that's ebony, and it's a tree wood. And then, of course, your antler is, is harvested from deer antler or elk or moose or whatever. And one of the important differences that people don't always understand is the difference between antler and horn. Horn is completely different than antler. There's no similarity really, other than the fact that it's sticking out of the top of an animal's head. The horn is basically matted hair that's grown together and gets very, very hard. And if you take a piece of horn, like a cow horn or a bull horn or something like that, and you start stripping it apart, you'll see the fibers it's just like hair basically. You can actually make a brush out of it if you actually just beat it with a hammer or whatever on the end. It'll become very fibrous. Bone, on the other hand, if you took a hammer to that, it's going to crack and break and just shatter, kind of like glass to some degree, just like when you break your leg or break your arm. So antler is bone primarily. Now, what I understand, it's also the fastest growing bone in the animal kingdom. That's what I understand. So, because they do shed them every year and grow them all back. Well, let's see. So that's the differences between, now if you were asking the sound differences, and that may be what you're asking, because it didn't say that, but if you're asking for the sound differences, Ebony is a decent sound on, like, say, if you used it as a saddle. Antler is a much more crisp sound and seems to transfer the sound much better. In other words, the vibration that's in the metal strings will transfer down into the wood bridge and into the wood top faster than putting the ebony saddle, because the ebony saddle is already going to dampen it a little bit, and then it's dampened a little more in the bridge, and then it's dampened a little more in the top. So you're not going to get as crisp of a sound out of the ebony for sure. So if that's what you're asking, that's the difference there. Carl Clark, when buying a beginner mandolin, what do you think of buying a laminated versus solid wood for the back and sides? Solid wood top. Yeah, if you can get a solid wood top, you're doing pretty darn good. I've actually heard some solid wood top mandolins with laminated sides that sound great. I mean, really sound very good. Where the problem comes in on mandolins, and it's this way on all stringed instruments to some degree, but especially on mandolins, is you really have to play them. You know, you can have two mandolins made by the very same company out of the very same woods, and one of them will sound really fine and the other one will just not sound good at all. So you really kind of have to play them. Mandolins are very picky about that. Guitars are too, you know, I mean, we all know that some Martins are better than other Martins, etc. and so forth. That's just the way it is. But mandolins are especially that way. So I would, if you can get your hands on it to play it, I would definitely get your hands on it and play it before you buy it, if you can. The one exception to that is I've had pretty darn solid good luck with the Eastmans. I really can't say I've seen a bad Eastman mandolin. Now, and I'm talking about, you know, mandolins in the lower price range. Now, a lot of the Eastmans are in the upper price range too. But so Eastmans are kind of on that edge, you know. But if you're buying the least expensive Eastman, I think you can feel fairly confident you're getting a fairly decent instrument. But if you're buying them in that price range down there where they're laminated, etc., and when I call that price range will be anywhere from under $100 to several $100s, $500. In that price range, you really need to play them. I mean, for sure. Okay. Let's see. I think that's it. I don't see any more questions. Well, we have 13 more minutes. What are we going to do? George, you got a song you want to sing for him? You want to?
I don't have a guitar.
You don't have a guitar. Well, and actually, I don't think I have one down here either. So
It worked out for me. Then.
yeah. Can you play a mandolin, George?
No, I can't play a mandolin.
Man, he can't play a
Too
mandolin.
many strings on a mandolin.
Too many strings. Yeah. Well, my problem is I have too many fingers. That's the reason I can't play one. They get in my way, you know. Then there's this disconnection between here and here, and you know, I don't know. There's somewhere there's a, you know, something's cut off, and it doesn't translate to here for some reason, for me. There's one last thing here. It's not exactly a question, but he's got a question mark at the end. Saw you using the binding router on the latest mandolin. You were saying it had a few cutting surfaces to work reliably. Couldn't you use a spiral type Dremel cutter? Yeah, well, Jay, the problem is, at least in my area and even online, I haven't been able to find the spirals anymore. They've all cheapened all their tools down and they've all gone to the straight cutters. And those straight cutters tear out wood a lot more than the spirals did. I love the spiral cutters, but all the ones I have now are so old and so worn out, they don't cut anymore, they just burn. So I don't use the spiral ones anymore just because I don't have any good ones. But you're right, the spiral one is far superior. And if I could find those in Dremel form, I'd probably buy some. But, you know, the ones with the carbide teeth are far superior yet, but for sure I haven't found anything with carbide in spiral that would be awesome if you could find that. Then let's see, tips on finding morels. Bruce is asking. Yeah, my tips are this. Look around, well, in our area. And I do know it can vary in different areas, but in our area for sure, elm trees are your big positive thing. Now, I have found them around all kinds of trees, don't get me wrong, but elm trees is going to increase your odds a lot. You can find them around oaks, you can find them around almost anything. I've heard people tell me you cannot find them around walnut. Walnut's too acidic, and I have found them growing right next to walnut trees. So I know that's not true. And I've found them under cedar trees, and people say they won't grow around cedar trees. And I've found them under cedar trees, twice in fact. In fact, one time I found like 15. So yeah. You can't believe anything you hear on the thing about morels. There's only a couple things that I will say that I have never seen. I've never seen a morel growing in water. I'm not saying they wouldn't, and I'm not saying water couldn't flood into an area where they're growing, but I'm just saying I've never seen them growing in water. Now, they'll grow close to water, but I've never seen them growing in water. So that may be something to consider. People say you can't find them up on hills. That's not true. I find them up on hills all the time. In fact, I know where one's growing up on a hill right now that I've let it was such a small one, I decided to let it just go and see if either more will grow around it or maybe that one would increase in size, which I don't expect. Generally, when you see them, they're done. Tall Red Easel, thank you so much for the super chat. $30. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate that. This is for the grandkids who you forgot to mention yesterday. None for you. I'm not sure what that means. This is for the grandkids you forgot, who you forgot to mention yesterday. None for you. I don't know what that means. Oh, I know. You were talking when I was naming names yesterday on the vlog yesterday. And actually I was going to get to that, but someone showed up in the shop and I cut that part off because I had to start working on a guitar. I was going to cover the grandkids, but you're right. Okay, I'll get to that, and I do plan to get back to that one of these days. And really, the way I'm going to tie the grandkids in, I'm going to tell you which one of them ended up with which one of my genetic deformities. Not all of them got any that I'm aware of, but several of them did get a few of my genetic deformities. So I thought I would tie them in that way. Let's see. We do have a couple more questions that popped up here. Peter Bryan. Yeah, okay. He's talking about putting question marks in front. Gabe, all I had on hand to glue a bridge and neck following a neck reset was professional carpenter wood glue. Will it hold? Yes. Yeah, carpenter wood glue is fine. Any real good wood glue is fine. Even Elmer's wood glue is fine. Titebond is fine. Really, the original versions of those glues are absolutely 100% fine. And really, I prefer the original version of Titebond, honestly. It's a very good glue. You know what to expect from it. You know how to get it apart. And the same way with the Elmer's wood glue. I don't think you'll have any trouble with that either. Now, I know they keep coming up with improved formulas, etc., and so forth. Sometimes those improvements aren't necessarily good for instruments, like the kind that's totally waterproof. That's not necessarily a good thing for instruments because you may have to take something apart down the road. And when they're waterproof, they're hard to get apart. Let's see. Foul Owl. He's asking, guitar player here, not a mandolin. My only mandolin is a Samick, I've seen those, with a oval sound hole. Why are mandolins usually F-hole and not sound hole design? Just curious. Well, there are, the two shapes that you mentioned. There are a lot of mandolins actually with oval sound holes. Most of those, and maybe that's true or maybe not true when I say most, but most that I've seen are the teardrop version of the mandolin. We call that the A model. So they don't have the scroll and the extra body points. The F style has the scroll and the extra body points. So there's the A model and the F model. And you can get the F model with the oval hole or the F holes. The F hole typically has more power. The oval holes typically has more of a, I don't know, classical sound, orchestral sound. I don't know. It's got a little different sound. It's more like if you were playing a lot of tremolo, maybe the style like you might have heard in the Godfather movies in the background type of thing. And that fellow that played those background things, I built him a custom mandolin, as we've mentioned before. I built his name was Carmine D'Amico, who played the background music in the Godfather movies, and he owned one of my custom mandolins. His mandolin was especially custom. I built a 10-string mandolin for him with tons of inlay, and it was on display in the National Guitar Museum for quite a while. Anyway, so that's the basic differences. There's the A model, the F model, and then the oval hole versus the F hole. And the F hole is typically more powerful. It typically has more sound and more punch to it. And it's definitely why it's used more in bluegrass, though you will occasionally see the oval hole style in bluegrass too. Okay, let's see here. We've got a few more minutes, and let's see if we've got one or two more questions. Are you going to build, this is Hoxo123 again. Are you going to build another instrument after you have finished the world's finest mandolin? Yes, I am. I'm torn on which one I'm going to do next, but I'm thinking I'm going to build a dobro. I'm fairly sure I'm going to build a resophonic guitar. So that's probably what I'll go to next. Pete C says, those are spiral cut and work well. That's the question. I don't know what that means. Sorry, just don't know what that means. Anyway, the spiral cutters, if you're referring to that on the Dremel tool, spiral means like if you had like a barrel, instead of the cutters going straight down the sides of the barrel all the way around the barrel, they would go at a spiral around the barrel, and all the cutters, follow each other around. And when they cut on a spiral like that, then they slice the wood off. When they're straight up and down and they're spinning around this barrel, they just tear the wood off, and it's just totally a different scenario. But like I said, all the spiral Dremel tools I have are completely wore out. They're just burned up. I've used them so much, and so I can't. And I've been looking. I can't find them. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right place. All right, we're about out of time, but I do see like a bunch of questions just popped up all of a sudden. Wow, I mean a bunch, like 6 or 8. I'll try to answer. I'm going to scan through here and just answer 1 or 2. Sorry. Yeah, didn't the Gibson representative at the Acoustic Shop Show explain the history of the F-holes? I think he did, yeah. So you could go there and look at that too, his explanation. But if you're asking me what the difference is, the difference for choosing one or above the other would be the fact that the F-holes is the more powerful sound, and the oval hole is, I want to say the more pretty sound. But it's kind of awkward to say that because you can really get very pretty sound out of the F-holes too. But it's more like the softer, pretty sound, if you will. I don't know if that makes sense. Do you have video or plans of the pipe jig you use for saddles, the one that attaches to the bandsaw? No, that jig I made there, it's a one of a kind, and I don't plan to make that available, actually. Sorry. I use them to produce those saddles, and since I'm selling saddles, that's just what I use it for. But I don't plan to make that available, I don't think. Have I ever used lignum vitae wood? No. And truthfully, I haven't. Someone sent me this as a sample, though. I've seen it, and I know it's very good for mallets and things like that because it's very dense, very hard, and holds together really well. I'm sure it would make a fine instrument. I'm sure it would because it's a hardwood, and I'm sure it's going to have a tone to it. And I can't tell from this shape of this block, but yeah, I'm sure it would be a fine wood. But I've never used it, no. All right, I'm going to take one last question because it's 9 o'clock and we're going to move on, and I get busy on his guitar so he can get out of here today. Otherwise, he's going to be stuck here all day. Oh, well, all right, I guess I'll let this be the last one. Joe Elias says, whatever happened to the 12-string guitar you built for the Scotsman? You couldn't find him. Well, yeah, that was a sad story. I don't know anything 100%, but it wasn't good what I think I found out. And he was in jail. And at least that's what I think I found out. And that's about it. So that guitar is still here, and I'm just going to hand it down in the family, I think. He did pay a deposit for it. It wasn't a huge deposit, but he did pay a deposit, and as far as I'm concerned, he has forfeited that because it's been a couple years now. So, too bad, so sad. But that one I'm planning to just keep in the family. It's a really nice guitar. So, in fact, it's nicer than any other guitar I've ever made for my own personal use. So, it's a really nice one. I'm going to let that be the last word today. So thank you all for joining me. We got up to 171 viewers today. Hopefully you enjoyed what you saw here today. Hopefully you liked my song, and I didn't run you off from that. And George is a nice fella here today, and I'm glad he's here in the shop and got to witness a live shop talk, so he can attest to the fact that these really are live. There's nothing pre-made. And we're going to get busy on his guitar and get the saddle and get the intonation working on that. So thank you so much for watching. We'll probably see you on Monday with the next vlog, if not before. Actually, I do think I have a video or two yet to release this weekend. So you'll see some videos. I think one of them might be on the mandolin, and for sure another one is on, well, no, one of them's on a banjo, I think. On a small banjo that actually Caleb did while he was here, and the other one I think may be on the mandolin. But I do think there's at least one for sure, and possibly two that you'll see over the weekend. I'll see you on Monday on the next vlog. Thank you so much for joining me today.